I just wanted to say thank you to everyone who is tuning in. Thank you for joining our podcast, following and subscribing. Be sure to check out our Instagram, join our Facebook group. If you haven't done so, be sure to visit selflessreflections.com and just become a part of the community here. We focus on people who are showing up for themselves in their dark moments and willing to selflessly reflect on that for others who are going through the same thing. So thank you so very much, Simone. I'm so happy for you to be here with us today. So go ahead, Simone. Just talk to us. Let us know what it is that you're hoping to gain, what you're hoping to share, and what your take on grief is and how that looks like for you.
So for me, I think what I would like to get out of this podcast is a release. So I am 33 years old. I just turned 33 6 days ago. And so for me, I call it my Jesus year. Those of you who know, you know, but he's been in 33 years. And so I decided that I was going to take a hold of what I felt like I was not paying attention to. Mm-hmm. So things transpired in my life that I can't control. This is life. However, there were some things where red flags were coming up, or, my intuition was telling me no, but I still wanted to take control and play that role of the creator and do and manipulate things in a way in which I felt I needed to so that I could feel secure. But when you're not a whole person, you're going to feel secure with a lot of things that are not necessarily the best for you. Mm-hmm. And so for me, this year I decided to be more intentional with the things I do, the people who I have in my life, the things that I say, the things I put out, and to make sure that it's going to be reciprocated. So when you can control something, for me, I am actually working on that, even though I'm talking about control, because it's one of the things that I'm talking about, right? Releasing. Mm-hmm. Even though I'm talking about controlling, I have to be more mindful of not being in control of things so that I can release things so that the things that are actually meant for me can actually have their place, because it's not going to, I don't have any space for the things that I want to acquire until I release the things that I'm just carrying around with me.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much. And so that's a great segue into what we'll be talking about today, which is grief, and the many stages that we go through as far as denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance. And just to give a little bit of a background, Simone is a personal friend of mine, and she and I have known each other for a few years now. She's opened up to me, and when she reached out and said that she wanted to do a podcast on grief, I knew that it was for healing. I knew that it would be authentic. Mm-hmm. I knew that she just wanted to share, and because it was going to be and was supposed to be for her birthday, I knew that it was going to be a moment where she reflected on those things, and like she just shared what she's hoping to get from the podcast today, but also sharing her journey with others, so that someone who is going through the same thing or wondering the same thing or has experiencing grief for the first time can have a personal insight on what that looks like for someone and what it looks like for someone to rise above it. So there's highs and lows, like with anything, and with grief, even though there's stages of it, there's not one. You don't start with, let's say, denial. You may be accepting of it at first, and then as life goes on and you start realizing certain things, you get sad or depressed. And so there's no real timeline for grief. And so being that I know Simone's story, and we're going to learn about more of what grief looks like for Simone, one of the things I just wanted to highlight is that, being strong and being able to pull yourself through things is not necessarily a badge of honor. A lot of times people think that when you are able to endure traumatic circumstances, when you're able to rise above and continue moving forward, that it doesn't take a taxing or a toll on you. And in fact, it does. And so that's what we're going to look at, and we're going to try to be as transparent as possible. And so just to put it out there, again, this is Simone's personal journey. We're just sharing so that anyone who is listening and chooses to listen to it can take in what is meant for them and what resonates for them. But at the same time, I do want to give a warning that it can be triggering. We will be talking about doing the work and going within. If at any point in time that you're listening to this podcast and something really strikes a nerve, please be sure to know that you can dial 211 or go online and look up. There are free community resources available to you for counseling, mental health. We're big on mental health and advocating for that. Mm-hmm. So if any point in time, it strikes a nerve or it goes a little bit too deep for you, I do want you to know that even on the website, you can go to it's a community board page, and you will see free community resources and affordable resources that are available to you, and you can get help. And if it's an emergency, dial 911. So one of the things that Simone, that I know about you from our personal relationship is that you grew up in a traditional home setting, considering the fact that you grew up and your parents were separate. Mm-hmm. I say traditional because in today's society, we're seeing less and less of people being married longer and having a two-parent household. What did that look like for you as a child? What do you remember? And being as though you were the youngest child of 6 siblings, how did you internalize what you saw at a very young age?
So I was the youngest girl. So I also had one sibling under me. I have one sibling under me, my youngest brother. And so for me, I just always felt this innate feeling of having to do more, having to step up more, to play the role of that co-parent. Mm-hmm. I'm not a parent, but I'm co-parenting. Mm-hmm. And so I would be the one to tell my little brother to go to sleep. I'd be the one to be like, you should have went to sleep. Like, I put myself to bed at 10 o'clock. You shouldn't have been up to 2 o'clock. Now that's why you're tired. I'm lecturing him on the way from school.
Right. And where did that come from? Was that because your parents weren't together and you guys were separated and you felt like you had to kind of pick up the slack? Or is that just a part of your personality?
I think if you ask, I have a sister who was 10 years older than me. If you were to ask her, I have always been this way. Family members tell me I have always been this way. Mm-hmm. I have always been an adult. Mm-hmm. I've always been straightforward. My sister even told me a story about my dad. He used to love watching soap operas up until he passed away last year. And I used to be his kid that would sit and watch the soap operas with him and be able to recite who was with whom. Like, just do a whole recap. And I was, like 2 or 3. So this is always...
So it's fair to say that you've always been that person who kind of took initiative and needed to have that control.
Yes.
Okay. So go ahead and continue. I didn't mean to interrupt you. So you were talking about your siblings, where you felt, mm-hmm. and how that looked like, what that looked like for you, being the youngest girl of the 6.
Yeah. So... I had control over my youngest brother, what I thought, but when it came to my other siblings, I was the baby. Mm-hmm. So my mom taught me at a very young age. She used to do things like put me into the lunch meat line and make me take the ticket. And when it's your number that's called, you're the only child here, so you have to speak up and say, this is my number. To do that as a child with a lot of adults, that's very intimidating. Mm-hmm. And so she did things for me to where she allowed me to find my voice.
Mm-hmm. Assert yourself.
So that aided in that too. But just being in a household with my mom was in one and my dad was in the other, it was normal. Mm-hmm. It wasn't until I got older and they started getting into this custody battle that I was like, this is different. Mm-hmm. Like, because the custody battle was 2 years, from when I was 11 to 13. And at the end of it, we didn't even abide by what they said. It was 2 weeks with one parent, 2 weeks with another parent. And then we wound up just staying with who we wanted to stay with, because in that time period, that meant that there was someone who had to take us back and forth every 2 weeks. There were books left at the other parent's house, clothes left at the other parent's house, important things that we would just forget. And it started to become taxing on everybody.
Okay, so I think it's fair to say that being as though that was not always what your comfortability level was. You were secure, you were grounded, your mother set you up for success. And then to have that change on you, you used the tools that she gave to you and your father gave to you and that was structured in your household to then regain that control back when you saw things were kind of out of control between both households. Would that be fair to say?
Um,
Or does that feel like it resonates? And the reason I say that, the only reason I say that is because um, children have a tendency to feel what the energy of the circumstance and try to compensate for it. They shouldn't feel the weight or the burden of their household and their parents, but they do. And in some cases, they can try to overcompensate. Not saying that you did, but in some cases, children can overcompensate, trying to appease the circumstance and not have it be tension and things of that nature. So when you mentioned things were being left, it made me think back on my circumstance where with my children, things being left, and you just wanted to be a little bit more responsible and going between both houses, and that could have set the tone for how you feel or how you were feeling as an adult with control and things of that nature.
Yeah, because when you're in an environment where things aren't stable, you're going to develop control issues.
And it's not, and I won't say control issues, but I'll say it'll be coping methods, a way of coping with the circumstances.
Yes, I think that's a gentler way of saying that. But the reason why I call it an issue is because it transcends just the environment. It you're not able to be able to look at things from a certain way. It has to be this way in order for you to feel secure. And so it becomes an issue when you start to get older and you realize you can't relinquish that control over things that you cannot control because you cannot control life. It does not allow you to even feel stable because what's your norm of controlling things, if it gets taken out of whack, it kind of like throws you off.
Right.
Completely.
Right. So okay. So thank you for sharing that with us. And so the on and off 2 weeks, and would you say that you were able to see the mistakes of others as you got older and then kind of set the tone for what you expected from life and things of that nature as you saw the way of the dynamic of the household and your other siblings, because even though you were the youngest daughter, you still were older than your brother, and you did get to see like the mistakes of your family members and how did that play a part in making the beautiful, strong woman that you are today.
So I just went against what was the norm. So, when I was growing up and my cousin was at the party, hitting the party line and going to wow and meeting up with boys, I would go, but I would go to make sure that everything was okay. I wasn't talking to boys. I had cousins who had kids at 15 years old, and I would look at that and, see how they would struggle. And yeah, it definitely took me all the way to the opposite side. But what I would say about that, it didn't allow me to do things that just kids do because I was so scared of going to the extreme that I went the total opposite direction and kind of like shut myself off and to be more reserved.
And so in your reservedness, I would say from what I'm hearing is that Simone was groomed to be mature at a very young age. Simone also took on the role of being a co-parent. Simone also looked out for her siblings because you were more emotionally intelligent and more aware of how things made an impact. And then I'll follow up with that. That led to Simone being in a 10-year on and off relationship where you kind of still didn't get to experience that youth and youngness and make those mistakes at an early age and led up to the Simone that I know we're getting to know now. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, everything happens for a reason. I call it the 10-year bid. And so
and this was during college, correct?
Yeah, so from the ages of 18 to 28, I was in a on and off relationship with a person who I just knew I was going to marry and have 2.5 kids with at this time, half because I would be pregnant at this point in time. And it didn't work out because it wasn't, I'm realizing that things aren't meant to work out. Sometimes God puts people in your life to teach you things, that whole season, reason, or lifetime. And my mom had just passed away. And what I learned is that I was trying to fill that void. And so I needed somebody to be there to love me, to support me, to encourage me. And that person at the time, he came in my life at the perfect time. However, when you're 18, you don't know yourself. You don't know who you're going to grow to be. Going to college where everybody is getting to know one another, you are going to be more free. Right. And so because of my reservedness, I had blinders on while I was in college. I did not engage. I did not interact. My boo was my boo, and I didn't care who was trying to comfort me. I was very faithful in college. And
so is it fair to say he wasn't? That's why I was on.
No, okay. He was not. He went to a predominantly white institution. He was on the football team. He joined a fraternity. All the things that make people more marketable. Okay. He acquired, and so
what would you say made you want to stay in that relationship then?
I saw growing up that relationships were not easy. That it was not rainbows and sunshine all the time. That you did not have to always be happy. And so, when you get older, you put the time in, things start to, resolve itself. The person stops wanting to sow their royal oats, or, you guys become more equally yoked.
So and you made excuses.
That's not really accurate.
Right.
Those relationships that I saw were toxic. Those relationships that I saw were not healthy.
But you didn't know that.
I did not know that.
So this is your example. This is what you saw growing up. This is what you internalized. And so it was okay. At what point did you realize that Simone wasn't happy and that Simone needed and deserved more?
Okay. So this was about,
bearing in mind you did lose your mother.
Yeah. So what happened was, I've always been somebody who's more of a nomad, I would say. Philly is home, but wherever I make my home is my home. And so I went to school in Maryland, and I moved to Maryland to be with the person I was with at the time. And he was always telling me that we were going to get married and have kids. And then something happened with his job, and he made a decision to move to New York. And when that happened, he didn't consult me. He just knew I was going to up and leave with him. Leave the people that I knew in Maryland, because I went to school in Maryland, and just solely be with him with no job, no support system, just have him. We weren't 100% stable. And so I decided that I told him, if you don't give me a ring by the end of the year, it's a wrap. And I would talk to my friends, and they'd be like, you don't really want to coerce somebody into marrying you. And I'm like, no, I've been with him all these years. I deserve it. I put my time in. And so I realized that I was trying to force somebody to do something that they might or might not want to do. So I thought it would be a good idea for me to go to counseling.
Okay. I think I want to unpack what just happened, what I just witnessed. Because this is the first time, and we've been friends for years, this has been the first time that I heard that story.
Okay.
So this is great. What I heard was that, and correct me if I'm wrong. What I heard was that, considering your background with, having a loving family with 2-parent household and siblings, and then watching your family go through a divorce and fight for custody for 2 years.
It wasn't. No, there aren't too many people in my family who get married, so that wasn't a divorce. They were in a relationship, but they weren't in a relationship when the custody battle thing happened. It was more of their egos.
Okay.
They were fighting with their egos, who was going to be able to have control over one of us, because they would do stuff to each other, but we would get affected. He's supposed to show up, but maybe he made my mom mad, so now, she's making it difficult for him to be able to see us, or vice versa, they would do things to each other. So it was more of their egos clashing to have control over the two of us. Mm-hmm.
And so, what I heard just now when you expressed when you realized Simone needed a change, Simone needed more, even though the environment that she witnessed growing up said that the relationship she was in was normal,
Mm-hmm.
and don't expect more than what you got. You realize, or your inner child realized that um, this is going down a path where, again, I don't have a say. So what I heard was, as a child, my mother taught me how to speak up for myself.
Mm-hmm.
My mother taught me, or my family, but I'm attributing it to your mother. My mother taught me how to assert myself, how to speak up for myself. You were always that independent nomad child, so moving wouldn't have been an issue.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Because you would get up and go. Your family was between two houses every other now and then. Y'all did what y'all wanted to do. That change wasn't the trigger for you.
Mm-hmm.
The change was that when you weren't taken into consideration when it affected your life and you weren't asked, and so you were muted. And I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like anytime someone does something where it shuts the other person down, um, you have the opportunity, in being the woman that you are, you had the opportunity to speak up for yourself. You realized in that moment, maybe not as deeply as being the outside person looking in, but you realized in that moment that this is the first of many times where I will not be heard or considered possibly, and is this the way I want to choose to live my life? Does that sound like
Yeah. Is
what
this
it
the way
seems?
that I want to choose to live my life? Is this what my life will be like if I really decide to stick it out with this person, be that ride or die,
Mm-hmm.
and become his wife? Because eventually it's going to happen, right? But it's going to happen on his term, on his time. So when I decided to go to therapy, it was because I knew we were breaking up. I did not know when.
Amazing. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I just knew that it was going to rip me to shreds
And you
because
were
for
going to
10
grieve.
years, right, for 10 years, this was the person that I depended on, that good, bad, and different. If I needed him, I could call on him. Um, Someone who I thought loved me unconditionally. And so it did speak remnants to how I felt about my mom and the things that she gave me. I knew that was going to take a toll. And so when I went to therapy, I went to therapy because of that situation.
The decision you made,
But it ultimately allowed me to start the healing process with my mom because it brought up things that I didn't know were there. What was going on during the time frame, when my mom passed away, was a lot going on in my family. So I really didn't have the time to grieve
or process.
I had to pretty much figure out what it was that I was going to do next. My mom passed away my junior year in high school. And so my plan was to get out. Like, I was going to graduate from high school. I'm going to college and I'm going far away. That was my thing. Just to run.
All right, and so that's when you would say Simone discovered therapy. Simone realized how important that, and not to speak about you in the third person, but that you realized how important mental health was, and you started to discover deeper remnants that really were inside of you that, like you said, that you didn't realize were there. What, if you don't mind sharing, and again, as you don't have to, but what were some of those things that you were learning about yourself that you decided you wanted to work on and change, and what did that look like for you?
The number one thing being what I wanted, right? So at the time when we were together at 18, he would speak about babies and stuff like that. And I was like, no. And I had a very morbid opinion about that. I'm like, people die having kids. Like,
oh my God.
You know what I mean? I see a lot of people in my family, they have a lot of kids and they're struggling. So if that happens, cool. But if not, it's not something I really want to talk about that very easily. So with that, and then I had a lot of abandonment issues. I had a lot of control issues. I was very hurt, but because I had stuffed it down so far, it came out as anger. It came out as me being disappointed in like the smallest things because I held this person on a pedestal. Like he wasn't human himself, like he wasn't trying to get to know himself as well. Like we weren't the same age going through the same life experiences. And so I just had to be more honest with myself about what I wanted and if I was actually ready to receive it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, one of the things that speaks volumes to me about who you are as a woman and as a person is your belief system. Where would you say? When would you say? I'm sorry. You really felt more in tune, or was took your spirituality a little bit more serious, or were you always serious about spirituality?
I would say, as a kid, you go to church with your aunts and you go on the holidays. But for me, things really didn't become serious. I didn't take them serious until, excuse me, I want to say like 2013. Started to go to church more. I was more active in church events. And I got baptized in 2015. It took me a long time. I kept hearing guys say, go up there, walk up there, accept me, accept me. But I was more like, no, I have to do it on my own time. I'm not comfortable. I don't want to walk up there in front of everybody. But I got baptized in 2015.
And what was happening on it?
The funny thing is, I was moving to Maryland. Now that I think about it, I was moving to Maryland. And I got baptized right before, like a couple months before then. No, I was moving to Maryland. I moved to Maryland in November. So yeah, a couple weeks before I moved to Maryland, I got baptized.
So how important do you think spirituality has been, or what role has played in helping you deal with the passing of your mother? You haven't gotten to the passing of your brother, which happened not that long ago, and then also the passing of your father, which also did not happen that long ago. What would you say? Because the basis for this question that I'm asking and where I'm trying to get to is that a lot of times, everybody needs something to help them along their journey. People use spirituality, people use religion. You're religious and spiritual, but people use spirituality, religion. Sometimes it's a group setting, or their values. I feel like from the outside looking in, um, when I talk to you, it's I'm focusing on listening and hearing his voice. I'm focusing on, and that's different for everybody. For you, I know that's what we're getting at. You're a religious person, but it's ironic to me. It's not ironic, but it's interesting to me that you decided, or you were moved to take it more seriously and make that commitment to God before major life changes started occurring, where you were open to seeking counseling and therapy, where a lot of minorities don't look to go to therapy, wouldn't admit to going to therapy, wouldn't think of going to therapy, would think it was a sign of weakness. For you, it was something that gave you strength and gave you the opportunity to grow. So I just wanted to see, excuse me, I just wanted to see the correlation between how quieting the noise and going within and listening to that intuition, how that guided you through these turmoil times. Um, what would you say? Would you say that as the progression of loss, because the relationship was losing your mother was a loss, deciding to walk away from a relationship that you embarked on right after you lost your mother, and then that helped you heal and understand when you went to therapy that you were not only suffering from losing your mother and that grief, and trying to process that, you were busying yourself and with this relationship and going to school and trying to distance yourself from maybe the dysfunction of your family setting, to regain that control that maybe you were not feeling that you had at the time.
That's exactly it.
And then also going within and realizing like, oh my God, I'm also dealing with abandonment issues because of all these other things that have transpired that I didn't work through.
Mm-hmm.
And now um, I'm deciding to go and really dedicate what my life to God. Not saying it like that,
I get what you're saying.
but now I'm really, taking the serious commitment because I realize I'm not in control.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I were, certain things wouldn't have transpired. And now that I'm realizing that there is work to be done, the only control that I have is to go within and deal with my demons and the things that are internal and important to me and what that looks like. So I wanted you to speak on, you know, how religion and spirituality played a role in that approach.
Okay. So, like I said, I was in the church or brought to church when I was younger. And the way that life works is that some people you become more close with. I have a friend, her name is Dion, and she has always been grounded in faith. And she would say, oh, she actually, at the time, it was me and my ex-boyfriend, you guys can come to church. And so that's something that me and him, we did together. Um, and I started to see just like how God was working, not only in my life, but in his life. Um, I started to see how prayer just allowed me to be at peace. How when I sat still and listened to him, that he guided me along my path and along my journey. Even me going to school, my dad did not want me to go out of state, so he made me sell my car. He wanted me to go to Temple. He was going to transfer to go to Temple because he was a mechanical engineer. I would have went to school for free. And so some of the promises that he wanted, he didn't like. He didn't go to Temple and get that job. And I think it's because he knew that I had my heart set on not being in Philadelphia. And so I just have learned more and more as the years have progressed that the stronger my relationship is with God, the stronger and more confident I can be in life, so that I can be more mentally, physically, and spiritually prepared for the things that he has already promised to me.
That was beautifully said. Okay. And so um, having that now set the tone for the way that you move forward, how did that roll? What did that look like? And the reason I'm asking this is because a lot of times when people go through things, they ask the question, why is this happening to me? So just to recap, you lost your mother, you walked away from a 10-year on and off relationship that you wanted to be a forever thing and thought would be a forever thing, but chose yourself, chose to honor yourself and listen to that inner voice. You decided to go seek therapy, and seeking therapy, you realized what work needed to be done. You rolled up your sleeves and you got to work. And then around that time, what was happening? Did you
around that? It's just funny to look back, right? Because I know I'm preaching on here, but it just God is good. So during that time frame, I had moved to Maryland. Everything was based on 50-50 because at the time, me and my ex were together. We broke up like 6 months after I moved to Maryland. Thankfully, at the time, we were staying with one of his line brothers, and his line brother allowed me to stay there so that I could get an apartment. So I got my own apartment. I learned how to be by myself. I learned how to be more independent. I had a job that was temporary, so everything was up in the air. But God always helped me to see. Yes, God always helped me to see it through. My bills were paid. I was sane. I still am sane. The people that were coming, into my life, sold into me. And so while I was in Maryland, I had I call him my work dad. His name is Denard, and Denard is a deacon in church. Denard, he just had a way of just speaking to us younger people. so that we could understand that the things that we think that are trivial
Huge, yeah.
are not trivial.
As trivial as we
That,
think.
yeah, all we had to do was just pray.
Mm.
Not pray and it'll go away. You gotta pray,
through
do
it.
the work,
Right.
Be honest, be still, and then listen when God says move, jump, don't, yes, be obedient.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so, at what time was it that you lost your brother?
So my brother passed away. My brother passed away November 4th of 2019. 2 days after we were all partying for my dad's birthday. He passed away the day before my dad's birthday. And so it's weird. Like, I know what it's like to lose a parent, and I was so far removed from like that pain, that emptiness, that disappointment. When it happened, it just felt like, the weird thing is, it felt like you can get through this. You lost your mom. But the part that I did not pay attention to is that this loss affects so many other people. Not to say that my mom didn't, but my brother has 6 kids. One of whom was just one. That was my dad's first child. My dad has been losing people since he was 11 years old. Not to mention that it happened the day before his birthday. We have a big family, and my brother was a different version of my dad. And so even though I lost a brother, I also lost a dad. I lost a friend. He was a parent to everybody. And so what wound up happening is we all just felt different. Everything was different. The holidays, because they were happening right before, Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving was different. Christmas was different. New Year's was different. His birthday is 17 days before mine, so it was hard for me to comprehend that I'm not calling him on his birthday, and then he's not calling me on mine. It was hard. It still is hard, because you always think that you're supposed to lose your parents when they're like in their 80s. You think you're going to lose a sibling. Like, yeah, y'all are going to go, but like, y'all going to be old. Not 41. Not when I'm in my 30s.
And then you saw how losing your brother, a black male, a good person. Not saying people who pass away weren't good, their lives don't mean anything, but just seeing how impactful he was. That was your first time losing a sibling, and I remember us talking about it. And you said to me, my dad just seemed to be a sad person. Not sad, but kind of had that way about him, because he had lost his siblings, like you mentioned before, since he was 11. He lost family members. He wasn't a stranger to loss, but now this was losing his first child. And your first time experiencing losing a sibling, you could almost relate to, but not as much so as your dad, but you could relate to him. And then what happened shortly thereafter?
Yeah, so so my dad lost his mom when he was 11. His dad really wasn't in his life. He didn't lose a sibling until 3 weeks later. So my brother passed away. 3 weeks later, my aunt passed away. My dad struggled with alcoholism, and depression and anxiety. Like, he just had all these unresolved stuff that, because people in his day, they didn't talk about it. They didn't.
I want to highlight, you were staying with your dad at the time?
At the time
when all this happened?
No.
Okay, because I thought that you were, and I just wanted to ask, like, you had to witness him go through these things emotionally. I wanted to bring that up, but if that's not the case,
no. So I would, check in on him here and there, but it was hard to see somebody in so much pain, and there's nothing that you could do about it. The one good thing that I can say that came from the losses is that my dad was able to be more vocal with his emotions. It wasn't just crying. It wasn't just drinking. I could ask him a question, and he could accurately tell me like how he was feeling and why he was feeling that way. It made him open up a little bit more to say "I love you" more to people, to make sure that he had conversations with each one of his kids and his adopted kids, in a sense, like my cousins and people that like we just have met through life, um, to let them know like how impactful they were on him. And so my brother passed away 3 weeks later. My aunt passed away. We lost a couple of family friends. In April, my uncle passed away, who was like my dad's best friend. And then 3 weeks later, my dad passed away.
And then, you know, what happened? I wanted to ask you this too. What happened when your brother passed away? Did they ask you to put that to do everything for that funeral?
Yeah, so my sister, um, sister-in-law, but she's been in my life since I was like 5, so she's my sister. Um, I've been used to it. My grandma passed away in 2013. I could put a resume together. I could do an obituary, right? And so, um, the weird part about that is that yeah, she did ask me. She was just like, Mona, can you take care of this? And Mona, can you take care of that? And it was just like no problem for me, right? Because I'm used to like when my family calls, just jumping in and supporting them. What I did not realize is that putting someone's life into a one pager, knowing the significance that they've had on you, how taxing that can be on your soul. And so for me, after my brother passed away, the conversation that I had with my older sister is I'm never doing this again. Mm-hmm. If somebody else in our family passes away, you're going to have to take care of it. Right. And so when my dad passed away, because I had that conversation, because I was upfront about where I was, when my dad passed away, my older sister jumped in and she took care of everything.
Now, because you listened to your intuition, because you did speak up for yourself, because you were praying about it, and I remember when we had a conversation about it, you did need that moment to yourself when your dad passed away. Can you talk about? I didn't mean to cut you short, but I knew how the significance of that conversation was. So, can you share with us and the viewers when your father passed away? What impact did that have on you at that point in time? After having lost an aunt, you lost your mother, your brother, your aunt, all those people back to back. It was a total of almost 6 people. That was kind of like, well, how did that feel for you?
It was
because now it's 2 parents and a sibling.
Yeah. I can't even say it was. It is, right? Because I'm still dealing with it. It's new every day for me. It's hard. Like you think your parents are super people, right? And my dad was Superman. Has my dad has been through so many things, and he's always come out on top. He was a very blessed man because the things that he always just got out of, it was just like he just has to be like lucky. And so for me, it made me realize that I need to seize the moment. So when my dad passed away, um, 3 or 4 days before my mom's birthday. And so our annual thing was to go to the cemetery and put flowers on her grave. And so I moved out of I was living with my grandfather at the time. I moved out. That was something I was going back and forth with because I was kind of like fearful and didn't know if I wanted to do it, if I could do it. But that was a tough situation staying there. So I moved out. When I was in my apartment, the first thing I wanted to do was show my dad. The first thing I wanted to do was ask him, can you come put my air conditioner in? To ask him, like, should I get a longer bolt on my door just in case somebody tried to break in? Like, all those things that I would call him for, I couldn't do that anymore. And so the hardest part was just knowing that there's still so much life for me to live, and he won't physically be here to play a part in it.
How did that? Thank you for sharing that. I know it's sensitive. It's still fresh. Something that you're still dealing with, especially being that your birthday passed away. And we'll get to that and how you wanted to have this conversation. You wanted to heal. You wanted to go internally, and you also kind of wanted to pay it forward. But thinking now about the losses that you face and where you are currently, your current headspace, um, being that you lost your father, and I think it was so profound when losing him because you lost your mother at a younger age, and you had one parent, and you bonded well with your father.
Mm-hmm.
You know things happen, but that was your parent.
Yeah.
So now to not have neither your mother nor your father, and to also see the impact that it was having losing your brother on his children and his family.
Mm-hmm.
What did that look like for you and your family dynamic? Because again, remember, you were the one who didn't mind moving out of the city, liked to travel,
Yeah.
was a loner, and now you're having what? What were you feeling after that? Looking back on this, on the circumstance of who you are today in comparison to who you were just a few months before your father passed away.
It made me more appreciative of the fact that the way that God works. So in 2017, I heard God say, "Get out of this apartment." And at the time, I was not working for 4 months, so all my savings, I was paying rent and bills and stuff like that. I moved from Baltimore back to Philadelphia to live with my grandfather, and I was so pissed. Like I was so upset. I was like, God, why are you doing this to me? Why are you bringing me back here? And lo and behold, those last 3 years I had with my dad, I was actually able to physically touch him. I was actually able to have conversations and pull up with him. I was able to go to his job and bring him lunch and sit and talk with him. I was able to talk to my brother more. I was able to see him more. And so for me, it made me realize that the reason that I was running is because I did not know how to filter my emotions when it came to my family. Because they can be the biggest blessing and the people that encourage you, and they can be a downfall. And so for me, I just didn't want to deal with it altogether. Um, because I don't think that I resolved the issues of the sadness that came along with, my mom passing away and my dad being sad and depressed all the time. Like, it's like nobody wants to be around that. But when you're able to accept people for who they are and you value having them in your life, it shifts things. And I think that's what happened in these last years for me is that I'm able to be more aware of where people are,
Mm.
be more accepting of trying not to change them,
Mm.
and having boundaries to know that if it's going to affect me in some way that's not going to be positive, I don't have a problem with stepping back. I still love you, but it's going to have to change in order for me to be able to have you in my life in a certain way that makes me feel comfortable.
So, thank you so much for sharing that with us and going inside and reflecting selflessly
Mm-hmm.
on the losses that you have experienced through your very short lifespan.
Mm-hmm.
It makes me remember a quote that I have. It was, "Be gentle with yourself. Um, you're human, and a lot of times what happens, uh, we forget our humanity. We forget, like you said, you put people on pedestals, we forget that they're human. But when we reflect and we realize like how things affect us, like you just said, you realize like, hey, now that I'm more aware of my feelings and how I'm processing things, I could be more accepting of when people are going through stuff, but at the same time maintaining my boundaries that will keep the right people in, but also keep the wrong people out, respectfully but
Mm-hmm.
unapologetically at the same time." And so, what I see and what I know, looking at you and our friendship and seeing the person that you have become within the last how many days? I want to say what's this, what day is this? The fifth. So I would say in the last 30, almost 40 days of the new year,
Mm-hmm.
um, you're starting a brand new chapter.
Yeah.
Um, you're you're sensitive, but with purpose,
Mm-hmm.
not with why is this happening to me? It's now. Everything is happening for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that over the years that I've known you and I've shared my stories with you and we've shared these stories back and forth, um, there's always been a little bit of behind stuff, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
man, okay, again, all right. But now, looking at you and listening and just seeing how over these last few years, the years I didn't know you and the years I do know have known you, um, you've turned a new leaf. And so, what are you focusing on now with all the lessons that you have learned and you are now applying within this year, not new year, new me, but literally you said it yourself. You realize that you have to seize the moment.
Mm-hmm.
You are how old?
33.
You are 33, and so you're taking the years of your 32 years of experience, and you're going to turn your 33rd year into, or would it be 34th? Am I saying that wrong?
No, you're saying that right.
Okay, you're going to turn your 33rd year into, and you made in the beginning of the show, you made a comparison of this is your Jesus year.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us a little bit about that and how you plan and how you envision listening to God more, being purposeful, seeking your purpose partner, and how that embodies itself in your relationships, your career, and your life.
Okay, so that's a lot. So, one, I would just say that I'm learning to let go of the past. One of my good friends, she said to me, "You don't let go of the past. You'll look back and you'll be like Lot's wife." And for those of you who don't know, Lot's wife turned into a pillar of salt because she wanted to look back, and she had one job: look forward. Mm-hmm. And so, for me, I am letting go of the past. I am being more authentic to myself. I have always been an outspoken person. I've always been brutally honest. I am learning to sprinkle love on that a lot more.
Yeah.
Sprinkle it on there a lot more. Mm-hmm. I'm also learning that everything does not require my opinion. Mm-hmm. But most importantly, I'm just building myself back up because with those losses, I lost pieces of me. Mm-hmm. I'm now learning what my new normal is. I am now learning that I have to take care of myself first so that I can outwardly give to other people. I'm trying my best towards my forgiveness because once you forgive, you're forgiving for yourself. You're forgiving to allow new things to come into your life. And I think that's one of the hardest things that people just struggle with because, when things happen to you, you do say, God, why me? But then when it happens to you from someone who you hold up a value, it's kind of like, how could you do that to me?
Mm-hmm. And that brings your energy. You're realizing that in holding on to that pain and that feeling of not forgiving that person is hurting you longer.
Yeah, that saying that they say it's like you drink poison expecting the other person to feel it, like you're going to die. Mm-hmm. And so when you forgive, it is shedding of the things that is weighing you down. But things happen for a reason. And I think that for me, people always say, you're so resilient. You're so strong. Mm-hmm. And that's because I've had to do that.
Right. So you are in a year where you're saying, I'm no longer surviving.
Yeah.
I am going to thrive.
Yeah. I'm no longer existing. I want to live. Mm-hmm. And so that's my plan for this 33rd year. And I have goals and dreams and aspirations for myself. I have things that I want to accomplish, things that I have started from the new year where it's just like discipline. Mm-hmm. Starts off small, having a schedule, reading your Bible, journaling, reading a book, to, my aspirations and my hopes are to me being more diligent and going to the gym, to, purchasing a home, to, finally getting into a place where I feel like I can be more accepting of the love that I actually deserve and not just accepting of things that people are just throwing at me because, it's an opportunity and hey, it might work out. And so, yeah, the grief, it's been death, it's been relationships, it's been disappointments. And I think that when you allow yourself to feel, when you allow yourself to go through things, when you allow yourself to process it all, and then you sit with it and you reflect on it, you're more able to you're more open-minded to be able to see why things happen, how rejection is for your protection, how
it's a redirection.
Yes. How, what you thought, like if I actually had what I thought I wanted.
If God gave me what I wanted, not what he had for me,
my life would be totally different. And I don't think that I would smile.
If you were in control.
Right. And so,
so you would say you are grateful for your losses.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that the grieving process, although as messy as it can be, as deep as it can be, as painful as it can be, it's almost like it's forged from the ashes. You were really right.
Yeah, yeah. And so, grief is the internal expression of how you feel, and so I think I'm more in the mourning process where I'm able to talk about it, I'm able to write about it, I'm able to outwardly express how the losses have made me feel. And I'm in a better place. Like I said to somebody or a couple of people actually, like I'm coming out of the fog. I'm able to be more present minded with what I want instead of um, just being
Going through the motions,
going through the motions, being unaware of like where I am, who I deserve, what
direction,
my worth is. Like it when you lose people, it just kind of like
puts things in
stunts you.
perspective, though.
Yeah, it stunts you. And then when something snaps in you, you just have to be able to realize that that time period happened for a reason. Take what you can from it, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and you're here for a reason. And so God is asking you to push on so that you can fulfill your purpose.
Well, thank you so very much, Simone. So I just want to close out with the quote that I found, and when I read it, I thought of you and I thought of our talk today. And
Okay.
it's grief never ends, but it changes. It is a passage and not a place to stay. Grief is not a sign of weakness nor a lack of faith. It is the price of love. So I thought that that was really beautiful. I don't know who wrote it. It was anonymous, but when I saw it, I knew it was for what we were going to talk about here today. Mm-hmm. And so I just want to close out with our I Am Everything deck. It's affirmation cards. And just, with so much positivity, I just want to go ahead and speak life into the circumstance and leave you and our viewers and myself with some peace and positivity. And again, if anything was triggering for you guys, please, we are advocates for mental health. As you have seen, that was a part of Simone's journey as well as my own.
It still is.
And it still is,
yes.
Especially with COVID, especially with all the things that we are currently facing mm-hmm. and dealing with. I think Selfless Reflections has a lot to do with going internal, honoring the human process, sharing our stories, and creating a community of people who are willing to be authentic. And being authentic, we talk about what tools we use and affirmation cards, spiritual journeys, whether you're Christian, Buddhist, Hinduism, Muslim, whatever works for you, share that because, when you go through things, you feel alone. But the honest truth is, like, what was that brother's name? He was the deacon that helped the youth. He told you that the things that you felt were like so trivial in your life, others have gone through as well. And I think the whole purpose is for us to come together as a community and bring unity within ourselves and amongst each other and lift each other up. So that's what we're going to focus on. And so let's see what we have. Ooh, we have I am connected. I have more in common with others than I realize. I seek commonality with people rather than focusing on outward differences. I am connected. So thank you guys so very much. Thank you, Simone, for being here and sharing your story and your journey. I hope God, the universe, whatever you guys believe in, I hope that you continue to be guided. I hope that you continue to have peace and prosperity. I constantly keep you in my prayers, and I know that you're a beautiful woman, and I know that God has so much in store for you just because of the life that you have. And thank you for sharing your testimony with us. Thank you for being willing to open up and share your healing process and share your pain. Thank you. And this is going to wrap it up. If you guys have any questions, you can email support@selflessreflections.com. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. And if you want to have anything that you want to say to Simone, you can just leave a comment below. If you want to share some information, she will check the comments. I will also relay the information. And thank you guys. And I hope that you are blessed. I'm sending positivity and light to the collective. Thank you and have a wonderful day.